All right, once again, we are off and running. My name is Jay Berman. Welcome to the New York Giants Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. It's a new day, it's a new era, it's new everything in Giants country. We'll dissect it all coming up next.
I'm Patricia Trainer, Locked On Giants, and isn't it a coincidence that on my pod playlist that Changes came up by David Bowie?
I'm Mark Collins, two-time Super Bowl champion. Hey, the house cleaning has begun.
Let's go, Big Blue. It's the New York Giants Squad. Everything New York Giants every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the G-Men. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. The Giants Squad Show starts now.
All right, we are back. It's Patricia, it's Mark, and it's Jay. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, it's Patricia, it's Mark, it's Jay, and it's a new era in Giants land. We're still sort of dissecting exactly what went down 48 hours ago, Patricia. What a whirlwind it's been.
Stop the cycle. I want to get up. No, I'm just kidding. This is great. I mean, these are some changes that have been long overdue. And John Harbaugh is coming in and he's making these changes. He's not afraid. He's been given some autonomy to make these changes. Again, some of them long overdue. And look, you look at his pedigree and the success he had in Baltimore with the setups that he had down there, and he's bringing some of that up north here to the Giants. I'm here for it.
Yeah, Mark, obviously this is a big week in Giants lore, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yes, to start. And whenever a new coach comes in, those strong winds, they blow hard, okay? So there's going to be some changes. It started right now. Already started happening. And that's to be expected. And, when the team's been losing like this over the last 9-10 years, you got to make changes. You got to make some sweeping changes. I'm all for it, like Patricia just said. I'm all for it. And who not better to do it than John Harbaugh? He's done a lot at Baltimore, won a Super Bowl, always had his team in contention. So it is a strong win. It's a hell of a breeze. I just hope it ends well.
Don't we all? Obviously, changes are expected when you hire someone like this. I was thinking about, and we'll get into all the changes, Patricia, but I was thinking about exactly where the Giants have gone wrong over the last however many years since Tom Coughlin. Why has it taken them so long to make these changes that, to be fair, seem like they've been needed for a while?
I think it has to do with loyalty. I mean, look, the Mara family, one of the most loyal group of people that you will ever meet. I mean, they are legitimately good people, and they believe in the people that they hire. And they're thinking, just from what I have observed, everybody has a bad day. Everybody has a bad week. Everybody has a bad year. You come back and you give it your all the next go around. The problem with that is when you stack up bad days and bad weeks and bad years, it can drag you down. But, it's interesting because if you look at the employee roster on the Giants.com website, you will see a lot of names that have been there probably, for over 2 decades. And that's loyalty. That's loyalty. I mean, in some ways, the Giants are kind of run like a mom and pop, where, family comes in, longtime employees who are loyal, they stick around. And it's hard to kind of not, to criticize that. But when the results aren't there and you're running now a $10 billion plus franchise, maybe you might want to alter how you're thinking there, because at the end of the day, it's all about results.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Patricia, because Mark, as you said, it is just, I don't know, alarming or astounding or whatever the word is that it's taken the Giants so long to make these changes.
Yeah, and like Patricia said, I mean, the Giants always been they had loyalty almost to a fault. Now, when my first years in the league, we had Rosie Brown on the staff as a scout, Jerry Shea, and these guys were older guys, but they hung around, and you knew they were older. You're talking late 60s, mid 70s. And these guys were old. That's what they do. And even from Ronnie Barnes. We'll talk about all that stuff later on, but that was loyalty there. That was the Giant way, and it worked back then. Now, fast forward, that loyalty to a point, you got to change with the times. And I think the Giants now are starting to see that, especially with other teams throughout the NFL have made changes to win now and and accept the modern NFL. Those teams have had success, and the Giants are kind of still stuck in the, I would venture to say, early 2000s, late 1990s. They got to move forward. I think they're doing it, and hopefully they get the right people to take them to the next level.
As I don't know, shocking or surprising as it is, I've taken a step back since the Ronnie Barnes stuff, and we'll get into it. And I've thought to myself, Patricia, this was much needed. And it's nothing, it's not a personal attack on Ronnie Barnes, but as you said, the Giants thought they had it in McAdoo. They thought they had it in Judge. They thought they had it in Shermer. They thought they had it in Dable, and they didn't have it with any of them. So none of this stuff is out of bounds.
No, it's not. And look, if you're going to hire these guys to be your head coach, you got to support them. And we talked about this, I think, on the last show that we did. McAdoo and Dable and those guys, they were first-time head coaches, so maybe they didn't know better. Even though they came from, winning pedigree organizations, it's a lot different when you have to run it yourself, as opposed to having, being a supporting player in the grand scheme of things. Harbaugh has run it himself for what, 17, 18 years now? He knows what winning looks like, and he's had success. And, you look at the pedigree he comes from, even before the Ravens. His father, who won, a college championship, if I'm not mistaken. His brother, who has been fairly successful. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. So, I think it would behoove the Giants to listen to what he has to say and really give it some consideration. If he says, hey, I know you guys have done it this way forever, but maybe we should try it this way, because this way has proven to be more successful, at least in my experiences.
Yeah. And John is a little old school too. If you got a good mix of that old school mentality that can adapt to the new school player, that mentality, it works. He's done it in Baltimore. I think he'll do the same with the Giants. Now, the difficult part I see is him putting the staff together that has the same drive that he would bring to the Giants. I think he'll do it. He did it in Baltimore. So that'll be his biggest challenge, and who he keeps with on the staff, whatever, that's his biggest challenge. But he mixes a little bit the old with the new, and I know he'll get it done.
All right, we talked about culture. Mark prefers the word atmosphere.
It's just a word. It's the same thing, but I get it. Everybody uses culture.
Yeah, and it's important. Obviously, that's something that needs to be, I'll say, fixed, for lack of a better term, Patricia. But again, a clear culture or atmospheric move, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not growing, if you're not changing and evolving, then you're dead. I mean, that's just a fact of life. That applies to individuals. That applies to organizations. You have to evolve with the times. I mean, look, I would love to go back to the 1980s. I had the time of my life in the 1980s growing up, but I'm also, I've learned things since then, and now I'm like, okay, I can apply things that maybe I didn't know back in the 1980s when I was having all that fun to how I can maybe live my best life moving forward. And it's kind of the same thing with organizations. What worked 20, 30, 40 years ago, great, but times change, people change. Trends change. And if you don't keep up with it, you're going to get left behind.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and the reason I say atmosphere instead of culture, though they're kind of the same word, but I'll put it this way. When you're winning, that atmosphere is fantastic. You like getting up, going to work, going to the stadium. You like practicing. You like the end results when you win a game. That atmosphere feels good. You go into the locker room, oh, cool. Quite the opposite when the atmosphere when you lose. When you lose, it doesn't feel too good. Now, a culture is something you grow. Now, how you build things. If it's built correctly, that leads to a great atmosphere. Been there many times with the Giants and in Kansas City. That atmosphere is good. Never been on the side where the atmosphere is really bad. A couple of times, that doesn't feel good. And that wasn't the culture that I was raised in. That was the atmosphere that was brought with the staff and the people that coach brought in. So it's a little different. If you watch, of course you guys did, the presser with John, you saw it at the Quest Center. The people were excited. That atmosphere was great. I saw it, watched a little bit of what I saw on YouTube on the Giants website. It was contagious. And that's something that's got to resonate not just from the first day of his presser, but all the way through. They got to, and the only way you keep that atmosphere is if you win, and they see you going upward instead of down. That is huge.
I instantly thought of Brian Burns right away. Like as soon as all this stuff went down, Brian Burns was like, "Heck yeah, let's do it." And it's not disrespectful to anyone that was there prior,
No.
but I'm thinking, Patricia, Brian Burns said, as I said, "Heck yeah."
Yeah, I mean, again, it's nothing personal. I mean, Brian Dable, most of the players that I spoke to, they had the utmost respect for him. Ditto Mike Kafka, ditto the rest of the coaching staff. But, again, it's a business. We always talk about when a player gets cut, it's a business, or a player doesn't get re-signed, it's a business. It's the same thing here. So, I can't blame them for being excited because it is a business decision. It's one that should pay off for them in the long run. But again, it's nothing personal to the previous regime.
Mark, I was just going to suggest that you talk about that more. The relationship between the player and the coach, especially when there's a new one.
Yeah, and I went through that twice with the Giants and in Seattle, I believe. But with the Giants, when they brought in Dan Reeves, it was. Listen, I'm gonna tell you, if you're a good player, the coaches know it. They know you're a good player. If you're a consistent player, if you do the right things, they know that too. So the change has got to be on both sides, the coach to you and you to the coach. That change, it's a filling out process. And once that coach knows that you are on board with the system and you can buy into it, of course they're going to keep you. And the same, that's just how it is. And sometimes a player gets released because of salary cap or, you're just not their guy. They're just not into you. And that happens too. You move on. But when a new coach comes in, it's not like that player has to go bonkers over the new coach. He's got to adapt to that coach. He's got to still do his job because the coach's going to do his job. You go play. You can be happy. Cool. Be happy. Great. But you still got to work because that coach, honestly, he doesn't know you. You're not one of his guys. He didn't draft you. But if you go out there, you buy in, be productive, he's young. These guys are young, and Burns young enough. You'll stay for a long time. And not if he doesn't make the Giants after 2 or 3 years of this contract, he'll go to another team. But on the pro level, it's a business. It just is, and it's not personal. You go in. Both coaches and players come in, do their jobs, try to win some games, and that's basically it. Both these players and coach, they're going to have to learn a lot about each other. Now, the down part for the players is, you know what? That coach has final say-so if you stay or go. And sometimes it's not always on how you play. It's not always the other stuff. It's just a salary cap deal, and that's it.
All right, let's do Kevin Abrams right now. We told you about specifics. Abrams, one of the guys that is out after, as Patricia said, more than 2 decades. And to be fair, I'm not trying to pick on the guy. Completely forgot that he was even on the staff. But Patricia, again, this is the beginning of the end for several Giant incumbents.
Yeah, I mean, again, from a human perspective, I never want to see anybody lose a job. I mean, having lost jobs due to downsizing or whatever, it's not a good feeling. And especially, Kevin Abrams has a family, as do, any other employees that might be out. That being said, it is a results-oriented business. You can't just sit there and say, oh, okay, you know what? You had a bad year, so just come back next year and do better. If it adds up, and the proof is in the pudding, if you look at it, the Giants, the salary cap hasn't been. I mean, it's been good here and there, but consistently good, no. And we're at the same situation now, despite what some of you out there watching might have read on Spot Track or Over the Cap. The Giants, if the salary cap was good, they wouldn't have to cut guys that maybe could help them. And they've had to do that over the years. Remember the first year when Joe Shane came in, he had to cut James Bradbury, and that sent the whole cornerback situation into a tizzy. All right. This year, they're looking at maybe having to cut Bobby Okereke, who, I think is still serviceable. I think some people feel he is still serviceable, but they're going to have to do things to make room because they don't have enough to fit under the top 51, which starts the first day of the new league year. So that all kind of falls under Abrams, who was the salary cap manager for a number of years. So, look, change has to be made. It's unfortunate, but maybe the next person they bring in to manage the cap is going to say, okay, you know what? We haven't used voidable years in our contracts. It's high time we start using them. By the way, that's something I've been pounding the table for. So, we'll see who they bring in or who they assign that to. But, it's the start of a lot of changes, I'm sure, that are going to come.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the players yet. I mean, wait till they change the players. It's going to be amazing. As we said, it has to happen in a particular order. Obviously, Mark, he needs to get the coaching staff down first. But again, in regards to Kevin Abrams, not surprising, but more like, whoa, Yeah,
well, I don't know. I didn't know he was the cap guy. I had no idea. He must have been in a dungeon somewhere underneath the stadium. I had no idea. But once again, I don't know much about him. I can't speak much about him, but what I do know this, the Giants always had cap problems. And if he's the reason, well, you hate to see a guy lose his job, but if he hasn't been doing correctly over the years, that's the nature of the beast. So he's caught up in the win with the Giants.
All right, we'll take our first quick break of the show. We still have to do Ronnie Barnes. We were scheduled to talk about Barnes at the top. We've had so much to talk about. We didn't get to him. We'll do that next. We'll also do Jackson Dart, who obviously played a significant role in the hiring of John Harbaugh. We'll do all that next. All right, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move without it, or you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. All right, up next is Game Time. NFL season in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Well, watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. We all know that. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. Well, that's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, and buying tickets took just minutes. One of my favorite features is being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so there are no surprises. The zone deal stood out too. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Get back to being there live. All right, we are back. Interesting because originally the report, Patricia, about Ronnie Barnes was that he was out, and we know how long he's been there, forever. But that's not exactly what happened. So why don't you fill us in on exactly what went down with Ronnie Barnes? And it's happening in real time.
Yeah. Actually, the original report was he was going to be reassigned, or his title or his role in the organization was going to change. That I think came from the Athletic. I think that's where the report might have originated. I'm not sure. I know the NFL Network had something on that, but the Giants issued a clarification as well, and they basically said that his title is not changing, his role is not changing. The only change that is being made is they're going to hire a new head athletic trainer. Now, that was part of Ronnie Barnes's title, I think. I looked it up this morning on the Giants.com website. So maybe Ronnie's going to be more of an administrator as opposed to more hands-on. And, they're bringing in supposedly somebody who has ties to Harbaugh, bet down in Baltimore. So that being said, Ronnie Barnes has been there since 1976. And you ask any player, Mark, you can attest to this.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie Barnes, and this kind of, I don't understand why fans pick on Ronnie, because his job is to treat injuries. He doesn't cause injuries. And people just seem to think that he's the reason why the Giants are always so banged up. Mark, you talk about how good Ronnie Barnes is and just how far ahead of the curve the man is.
Ronnie Barnes is, if I'm not mistaken, he's part of the NFL's total medical deal. He's higher up. He knows everything. Ronnie Barnes is one of the reasons we won championships. We were a healthy team when I was there. Ronnie always was there and doing this stuff way ahead of the medical staff situations back then when I played. He was well ahead of the curve. And another, how many athletic trainers do you know who are in the Ring of Honor of a team?
Can't be very many.
No, none I can think of. Ronnie Barnes is giant royalty. Always has been, always will be. When I go back to New York, New Jersey, always see Ronnie Barnes. We talk a lot. Ronnie's a great friend. The best athletic trainer I've ever worked with or work with me. Even to the point where for the Giants to move on Ronnie Barnes, to reposition him, they say, to bring somebody from Baltimore, that's a pretty strong move, because usually teams don't do that. When a coach comes in, that training staff stays. I can't think of anything offhand where a whole training staff happened. I think when Marty Schottenheimer left to Kansas City, he brought his training stuff. Something like that. I guess it does happen. But the Giants, once again, we go back to loyalty. Ronnie Barnes is giant royalty. I know things change. As long as Ronnie is still in the building, even if he's repositioned, I hope they don't take away what he brings to the Giants. I don't want the Giants just to put him in a box and have a title. That kind of crap. I hope they don't do that. I hope he can still be hands-on. But Ronnie Barnes, you ask any player from my era to Michael Strahan's era to Eli Manning, ask those guys about Ronnie Barnes. They'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you. He knows his stuff. Will always be a Giant, and I hope they don't put him in a box and stick him in a corner.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've gotten to this point now. At some point, when John Harbaugh and whoever sat down and discussed taking over the Giants, I'm sure they realized that, Patricia, he was going to say, I'm taking over completely. I want every one of my guys in the appropriate spots, even if that's Ronnie Barnes taking a back seat after 50 years or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything that touches the football part of the organization, John Harbaugh is probably going to have his fingers in it. All right. The weight room, how they do strength and conditioning, recovery, the practice schedules, the administrative staff, the analytics. I would suspect at some point after the draft, the scouting department will probably change over a little bit. That's one of the reasons why you brought this man in here. You didn't bring him in here to just say, okay, I'm just going to go along with the flow, because you guys have been doing it a certain way all these years. John Harbaugh comes from a winning organization. He knows what it looks like, how it has to be. So why wouldn't you want to tap into that expertise?
Mark?
I agree 100%. But there are certain people you just don't touch. I tend to think, the people that when I started playing, I was told, and I live this to this day, there's 3 people in the organization that you respect everybody, but these 3, you always kind of really respect them. The secretaries in the coach's office, the training room staff, and the equipment managers. Those 3 people, that's the brain trust to me of an organization. And with the Giants, I know there's going to be some changes. Secretaries, front office secretaries, the equipment managers, and now the training staff with Ronnie Barnes. I just hope out of those 3 that Ronnie is still there. I know people won't lose their jobs, but Ronnie is a Giants legend, and I just hope he's still has some flexibility to roam around and still do his work with the Giants.
And the fact that the Giants needed, or at least felt obligated, to put out the statement clarifying what the report said tells you all you need to know about how they feel about Ronnie Barnes. And rightfully so, Patricia. I mean, he's the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's very underrated. I mean, I get fans. There's a couple people on my X timeline that are always saying, "Oh, every time there's an injury, oh, Ronnie Barnes' fault." Ronnie Barnes doesn't break legs. Ronnie Barnes doesn't cause guys to pull hamstrings or groins or neck injuries or anything like that. His role is to treat those injuries. Now, if you want to make an argument and say the strength and conditioning program maybe needs a little upgrade, that you can say. Does that fall under Ronnie? I'm not quite sure if that's what falls under Ronnie or if that falls under the head coach's domain. So you can make the case that, the preventive part, yes, that might have to be upgraded given all the soft tissue injuries. But the treatment of it, I mean, you ask any Giant players, you look at the NFLPA, they do that report card. They've done it the last 2 years. The Giants training staff has consistently graded out well. So, I mean, that's coming from the players. So I don't know what else people want.
Yeah. Quick story. So back in the day, 80s and early part of the 90s, when a player got hurt, most of the head trainers were forced by the head coach to get those players back on the field as soon as possible. That was the way of the league. This is how it was. The Giants, Ronnie Barnes was one of those guys that him and Parcells, they would go at it because Bill would want, hey, get him back in the game, Ronnie, get him in the game. And Ronnie would go, no. This guy's hurt. He can't go. And Ronnie would always give pushback. That's just Ronnie. Ronnie didn't kowtow to anybody, whether it was Parcells, Dan Reeves, or whoever. He stood pat. The players' protection and health far supersedes the organization's need and wants right now. That was Ronnie. And damn it, I just hope that the Giants really realize that and keep him still entrenched in the organization.
All right, before we take another break, let's quickly do Jackson Dart, because for some reason, and we're not doing it intentionally, we just haven't discussed him that much. It's almost like he's been put in the background ever since the Harbaugh stuff came to light. That being said, as we discussed last time, Patricia, a huge role played by Jackson Dart. Whether he meant to or not, he did, and that's a huge part of this.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're a new employee coming into an organization and you find someone who is enthusiastic as you are about the topic or the task that you're about to undertake, what more could you ask for? That's what Jackson Dart is all about. He's always optimistic. He's very positive. He's very excitable, very enthusiastic, loves to talk ball. And, you got a coach coming in who loves to talk ball. So, hey, match made in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm not surprised. And Joe Shane, I think I mentioned it the other day. Joe Shane went off the podium when he spoke to us. He said that it wasn't planned for Jackson Dart to sit with John Harbaugh, that it just happened. And he said, yeah, after a while we had to go and we had to break up that little tete because, otherwise we wouldn't have gotten anything done, with John and gotten to the next part of the interview. So, I mean, the fact that Jackson Dart just happened to be there, and, he's been in the facility a lot doing film study, working out, getting ready for next year. I mean, it's just, it was good luck, a stroke of good luck that he happened to be there, and Harbaugh, got a chance to meet him, because look, the quarterback is going to be like the key to the whole winning thing. So it was good that they were able to get on the same page so quick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mark, that's a huge relationship right there.
yeah, it is. But I tell you the cool part about it, Jackson has 1 year in the league, right? So it'll be easy for him to adapt to John Harbaugh's or whoever the offensive coordinator comes in. It's easy for him to adapt to a new situation. It's just easy. Now, if he was a 4 or 5 year vet at quarterback, he could still do it. But it's just he's cut another way of an OC he was on for 5 years. But it's 1 year, so the transgressions over to a new style won't be that hard, and bonding will not be hard. So it's an easy situation for Jackson. I love how it happened. I mean, spontaneously was awesome. I think it's a great start, and can it blossom to be something more? Yeah, I think so. I think both of these guys will be on the same page pretty damn soon. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, look at the relationship that Eli and Tom Coughlin have. I mean, why can't it be like that, Patricia? It would be no different. Obviously, he's got to win a couple of Super Bowls. But that being said, we've seen the groundwork for relationships like that in this very building.
Absolutely. And you can go back to Phil Simms and Parcells. The two of them had a little different relationship. Parcells knew how to ride guys and push their buttons, and Tom Coughlin wasn't so much like that. But yeah, it's such an important relationship, because if you have the head coach and the quarterback at each other's throats, you're doomed.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we return, we still have to figure out coordinators, because that's the next step for John Harbaugh. We'll try and sort through all the names. We'll do that next. All right, time to tell you about TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th, take taxes off your plate, and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, so we are back, and as we said, we need to figure out who the heck is going to run the offense, who the heck is going to run the defense. The latest request is Willie Taggart, who was in Buffalo. So obviously the Giants are not wasting any time here, Patricia. What can you tell us about the latest?
Yeah, I mean, Todd Monken, I think, still remains the number one guy, but he's waiting to find out if he's in or out in Cleveland. He had a second interview for the head coaching spot up there. But it is strongly believed and has been reported, like just about everywhere, that Monken is going to be the number one guy. Now, that being said, Willie Taggart is not a bad, second choice if it comes down to that. Willie Taggart has been in coaching over 20 years. He has head coaching experience. Down in Baltimore with John Harbaugh, he was the running backs coach and assistant head coach. I could see, even if he doesn't get the OC job here, I could see him still having a role here on the Giants staff with John Harbaugh. The Ravens running game has been really good. I mean, last year, I think they ranked second in the league in average yards per game. And I think they were first in average yards per rushing attempt. So that would not be a bad hire any way you look at it, whether it's as OC or as, the running back / run game coordinator.
Go ahead, Mark.
But you see how that who you know, who you trust, things work in coaching? It's who you know. John knows both of them. He has history of both of them. So if Taggart is option B, yeah, it'd be great. Because Buffalo's offense, man, they were a juggernaut for 4 or 5 years, especially with Josh Allen up there. Now, if Todd Monken comes, which I think is his number 1A choice, that's cool too. I'm all for that, man, because I think Baltimore's offense over the last, I would say maybe consistently, the last 11 years, they've been pretty damn good, pretty effective. So I like either one. I like Monken first, and if Tracker comes along as 1B, I'll take him too.
All right, obviously the dominoes need to fall in several cities. We're still waiting for Baltimore because they need a head coach, and they're blocking certain guys from even talking to John Harbaugh, and that is Chris Horton, special teams coordinator, who, as we said, has been blocked by Baltimore. But, Patricia, it could change depending on who the Ravens choose as their head coach.
Yeah, it could, but usually in those situations when they block guys from talking to other teams, it means that they're going to recommend that guy to whoever is coming in. Now, obviously, it's up to whoever they do hire to say, yeah, I want him, or no, I don't want him. Chris Horton was a pretty good special teams coach. He had his units ranked up there. And, the Giants, as part of the sweeping changes that they made, Michael Gabriel, the special teams coordinator, not retained. I would expect the guys underneath him were not retained. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what other coaches were blocked by the Ravens from talking to the Giants. I think if I remember correctly, someone told me that most of the offensive staff was allowed to interview elsewhere. Some of the defensive guys they're retaining. I don't know if Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator, is somebody that, they're going to allow to interview, but that's really, for me, the biggest question mark is which direction they go in at defensive coordinator, because it can go any number of ways. And, one of the reports and something I had heard actually at John Harbaugh's presser was that they would maybe retain Charlie Bullen, but I don't think as a defensive coordinator. I think they would probably want him as an outside linebacker coach if Charlie wants to stay and if Charlie doesn't get a DC position elsewhere.
We're all so anxious, and we want this to get done quickly and rapidly and get us to the next season. That being said, Mark, we have to wait for other coaches to be hired in other cities. So to be fair, it's annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying. But once again, as long as the Giants land a very good OC and a very, very serviceable to good defensive coordinator, I think they'll be okay. As far as the special teams, like I said before, that would be the last person I would hire. If I want to wait or see what Baltimore does, cool, we'll wait. And if we got to pull somebody else to be a special teams coach, we'll do that. But that would be the last thing that I'll worry about is the special teams coach. Now, the DC, yeah, you hear reports of all these guys from Rex Ryan and all these other coaches. You can pull the old guy and give him a DC job, or you can put Antonio Pierce, whatever. You could do that too, but you got to be right on both of them. And the special team coach, I'll just wait, and that'll be my last deal.
All right, so let's do Carmen Brasillo and Tim Kelly. Obviously, we've discussed these guys for a lot, very many shows. And the fact that they might be considered to come back, specifically Brasillo. Obviously, it's one that everybody's pining for, Patricia. I'm guessing, will come back.
He's under contract, and he said, the last assistant coach's media session that he held, he said, if the new coach wants me, I'll be here. I'm hoping that that Harbaugh wants Brasillo, because you look at what he did with that offensive line. And, if you need proof of this, Marcus Bowe, a 5th-round pick, the game wasn't too big for him. John Michael Schmitz, the center, who everybody was thinking, oh, gosh, another bust. He took a few steps forward in his development. Andrew Thomas continued to play at a high level when he was healthy. Jermaine Illuminor had a solid year, just has to clean up the penalty stuff. I mean, I think you can even make a case for John Runyon and Greg Van Roten. their seasons as that went on getting better. So Carmen Priscillo has done a fantastic job with this offensive line. And, why fix what's not broken if you don't have to?
It all depends. Cronyism and nepotism, right? If Baltimore, I don't know what coaches of Baltimore is trying to retaining for the next coaching staff. I don't know if the offensive line coach is part of that group. But if John Harbaugh wants that guy, he's going to bring his guy. I'm not saying the Giants' old line coach was bad. I'm not saying that, but that's just how it works out. I don't like it, but that's the society that we live in football. You're going to bring the people that you like and you trust. No matter how good of a job that guy has done, if your guy is comparable, even slightly less better than the coach there now, he's going to bring him. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
I think it says something, though, that the defensive coaches on the Giants weren't even given an interview with John Harbaugh. They were basically said, okay, thank you for your service. We're moving on. Priscillo is getting an interview, or did have an interview. Okay. He was one of a small handful of the holdover that got one. So that, to me, would suggest that maybe John Harbaugh is considering it.
Based on probably waiting to see what Baltimore does when they get a new coach. And if the offensive line coach down there isn't being held back.
All right, so if Harbaugh wants Baltimore coaches, which he's going to get, he's going to want Baltimore players, especially the free agents. As much as we were pining for all these Baltimore coaches and then obviously Priscillo to stay, this same stuff, Patricia, is going to go down with players, specifically Ravens UFAs.
I always make this comparison, and I don't know if it's legit, but it's kind of like, if you open up a new franchise as part of a chain restaurant. And I used this example on my show yesterday. I said, you open up a new McDonald's store, and then McDonald's, the main corporation, is usually going to send corporate trainers down to help you get set up, to run things the McDonald's way, to get the message out, the customer service, to get the quality that you need in order to be aligned with what McDonald's expects. It's almost the same thing when you have a new head coach coming in. He's going to want to bring in players that, he coached previously. We've seen it with the Giant, with Brian Dable. We saw it with Joe Judge. We've seen it with a bunch of coaches, Tom Coughlin, with Boston College guys that he brought in, some Jacksonville guys. It's just a natural, because these are guys that and it's so important. You look at Parcells and you look at Coughlin, and two things they did that I hope John Harbaugh does here with the Giants. They had leadership groups, leadership councils. Those were the lieutenants, when Mark played, Harry Carson, when he spoke, you listen. When Lawrence Taylor spoke, you listen. Phil Simms, George Martin, you listen. Carl Banks, etc. In the Giants, the Coughlin era, Eli, Michael Strahan, Antonio Pierce. So you had those quote unquote corporate trainers in the locker room who set the tone and made sure that the message that the coach wanted was being carried out. And that doesn't mean that the coach, stood in his office and stayed there, and didn't interact with the locker room. But when you have 53 guys and then 17 practice squatters, and then how many, on IR and everything like that, it might be a little hard to talk to everybody at once. So that's where you want those leaders to come in.
We had that situation when Dan Reeves came from Denver to the Giants, new coach. And he brought a lot of the Broncos players with him. And as a player, we started calling ourselves, our little focus group we had at the Giants, the New York Broncos. Because, hey, all these Denver guys, and but there was no animosity like, oh, we hate these guys. No. Simply because Dan Reeves has won in Denver. They won a Super Bowl at the time, but Dan Reeves was a proven winner. So he knew how to build teams. So the players that he brought over, they played well. Michael Kroll, who else we bring in? Brad DeLuiso, guys like that. Michael Brooks, some great players. And these guys came over and they didn't help us to the point where this is the Bronco way. But they did kind of go, you know what? Let's bridge that gap between this NFC East, AFC West gap, because back in the day there was a gap player wise, physicality, so just whatever. Bridge that gap, and we did pretty well that year. I think we were 11-5. But yeah, you're gonna need those kind of players, and John's going to do the same thing. You're going to see some players from Baltimore, and I tend to think, even though now the leagues are basically interchangeable, AFC, NFC. The Ravens players, the Ravens style of offense and defense, they're very physical. So I would not be surprised, and neither would you guys be, when you see players who are coming to the Giants with the same mentality of the old days NFC East, that physicality, and they help the players to get on board and on the same page with how John Harbaugh runs a team, how to build a competitive roster.
All right, our final break of the show. We still have to do injury updates. Obviously, Malik Neighbors and Cam Scatterbo. And there's some players that are still under contract that will be on the Giants no matter what next season. We'll try and figure out if Harbaugh can get those guys turned around. We'll do all that next. All right, time to tell you about Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Are you hiring? Well, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page, and it'll help you reach the right candidates faster. All right, if I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored job. So again, good odds. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now. Support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. All right, so obviously a lot to discuss here. We'll do injury updates because at the presser the other day, or at least in some sort of interview, Joe Shane spoke about Neighbors and Cam Scatterbo, the huge injuries the Giants suffered here in 25. I think we're on track so far. Pretty good, Patricia, as far as those guys returning on time.
Sort of. I know Cam's sort of. What Joe Shane said off podium is that Scatterbo was definitely on target. He was on schedule, and he was asked, when do you think he might be ready? He says, he should be ready for training camp. Fingers crossed, obviously, because things can change. He said, I don't know if he'll be ready. He said he could possibly be ready for the spring, late spring, like OTAs, which would be just an amazing recovery. Yeah. Malik Neighbors, he sounded a little less certain. He said, we're hoping for training camp, but he sounded like, we'll see, and it's interesting because Malik Neighbors, when you talk to Malik Neighbors, you talk to Cam Scatterbo. Scatterbo, without question, without doubt, I'm going to be ready for training camp. Malik Neighbors, his response is, when my body's ready, it's ready. And it reminded me almost of Andrew Thomas when he was coming off the injury. He kind of was like the same way. He's like, when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. And we all know he wasn't ready to go until, 3 weeks into the season. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Malik Neighbors. I don't know, but he's on schedule. He's not behind schedule. Now, is he ahead of schedule? I don't get that sense. I get the sense that Scatterbo is ahead of schedule. But again, there's so much time. We're only in January. These guys don't have to be ready until the second week of September. So there's a lot that can happen between now and then. But as of now, that was the update that, it sounded like Scatterboo was more certain to be ready for training camp, and Malik, they're still kind of holding out hope that he will be.
Just goes to show how devastating that knee injury was for Neighbors. The fact
that he said it was messed up. He said his knee was really messed up, but he did say the surgery fixed what was messed up in his knee. So
he can't be too thrilled about getting back on that turf. Topic for another day. I understand that. But that being said, Mark, we all love everything that is the Giants now because we want a return to glory, so to speak. That being said, we need to be healthy. And if Neighbors isn't healthy, that's going to be a tough task.
Oh, yeah, it'll be a tough task. If he's not healthy, I'll tell you, come draft day, guess who the Giants are taking at number 5? It won't be a left tackle. So yeah. When he's ready, he's ready. He'll be ready. And the injuries is something that you monitor from afar, like we're doing. It's up to the player. They know their bodies. They know what they go through. They know all the training, all the physical training stuff they got to do. And sometimes, more times than not, you got to marry that injury with your mind, your thought process. Hey, I'm on a time schedule. I got to be ready. I get this going. And sometimes you're just not there yet. And Neighbors is probably not there yet, no matter how bad this injury was. So when he's ready, he's ready. But if he's not ready and the Giants will know this before the draft, his time frame. If he's not ready on their time frame, the Giants' time frame, Giants taking a receiver first round.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Again, the Giants have the number 5 pick. There are obviously guys that will return. The question is, how effective will they be? And how effective can John Harbaugh be in getting these guys to maximize their potential, Patricia? Hyatt and Banks. Those are 2 right there.
Yeah, we've talked about Banks before, so let's start there. Banks's issue, he's got talent. I mean, let's be honest here.
Mm-hmm.
His issue is up here in his head, because when something goes wrong, he loses his confidence. I mean, you can see it. It's as plain as the nose on your face. So some players, when they get beat or they have a bad game, they totally lose confidence in themselves. There was at least one other player on the team that had that happen to him. So, part of the role of a coach is you've got to kind of be a little bit of a psychologist as well and say, look, put it aside. You're better than this. We know you're better than this. You can do it. We know you can, it's like you fall off a bike. Sometimes you're afraid to get back on the bike because you don't want to fall off again. They've got to kind of work with Banks on that. So that being said, they also have to put in a system that can take advantage of what Banks does well. You cannot ask a guy, and I know Mark will probably disagree with me on this, but if a guy is, all his college career was a great press man cornerback, and now you're asking him to play zone and he barely did it. And I know in today's NFL, you have to be able to do both, but was Banks properly taught to play zone? I don't know what goes into, the differences in teaching zone versus man press, but that's the other thing. And, Harbaugh, going back to, what he said in his opening press conference, he said, I want teachers here as assistant coaches. And I think that's maybe why the Giants haven't gotten a whole lot out of Banks.
He needs a teacher, you're right, because gone are the days you just play strictly man coverage, bump and run, or play zone from off. You got to have a lot of tools in that belt to play. And since we're talking about Banks, I would teach this kid, okay, what do you like to do? You like to play man from off? Can you press bail? If you can't jam, okay, cool. We won't put you in a situation to jam, to play bump and run. You got to find what he could do. Once you find that, then you make calls to help him be successful. I don't think he's ever had that done before. Or if he can't do all of them, you find another position. The guy has talent, no doubt about it. How about a little free safety? How about, just something. You don't want to just pigeonhole him as a bad player, because he isn't. You got to teach. I've taught this before. I taught college kids. I taught some of these NFL players back in the day. But you got to have more tools in the belt. Now, as far as Hyatt, I mean, hey, To me, that's just an attitude. Do you want to play? Do you want this? Do you love this game? Got all the talent in the world, but if you don't want to play, as Parcells said, hey, I'll find somebody else who can, who want to do it. That's just, to me, that's just attitude. That's me looking from on the outside looking in.
All right. Obviously, this is a topic we'll discuss many times over the next however many months this show goes on for, and years, hopefully. That being said, expectations will obviously change from now until April, the draft, then obviously, free agency and the draft. That being said, at this point in time, Patricia, what should our expectations be of how 26 runs?
Well, I like to take it in stages, because if you get too far ahead and you start predicting what wins and losses, I mean, you're going to be dead wrong.
Yeah.
So obviously the first stage right now, get the right coaches in here. And then once we see who the coaches are, now maybe we'll have a clue as to what they want to do personnel wise, because certain coaches have certain schemes they like to run, certain, philosophies. That's going to tell us what direction the roster goes in. In the meantime, you're going to have to clean up the current roster. There are going to be salary cap cuts, right? I mean, there's just no ands, ifs, or buts about it. They can't get around it. So what guys no longer fit into your plans? And I can think of, two right off the bat, and I'm sure there's more that, if I, that I can think of if I spent the time. But Graham Gano, I don't see him coming back. James Hudson III, don't see him coming back. And then you have question marks, do you bring back Devin Singletary, which, they might bring back? Do you bring back Bobby Okereke? I think they could bring him back. Do you restructure anybody? So those are the decisions they have to make. The assistant coaching staff, and then that coaching staff has to sit and evaluate the players at their in their room, so to speak, and say, this guy's going to fit what we do. This guy is not. And then from there, you just kind of build it up. And then we'll get to, I'm sure down the line, we'll get to predictions and, what kind of season record they're going to have. But you got to take it one step at a time.
We're also happy with the way things have turned out the last week. I'm anxious to get to the expectations and put a win total on it, but I know that's ridiculous. Mark, what should the expectations be for this next stage before we get to free agency and the draft?
I'm going to leave it right here. I'm going to bask in the glow that we got the coach we wanted. Everything else after this, we won this moment. We got the right coach, okay? Everything else, we'll talk about that later down the line. I know Patricia did a hell of a job. I like how you think. I'm with you, but I'm a bask in this glow that we got John Harbaugh. And let me let this run through, and then we'll talk about the other stuff later.
All right. Well said, Mark. And you're right. It's kind of a ridiculous question, but it's probably one we're going to ask quite frequently over the next however many months before we get to those games. That will wrap up this particular show. And again, it has been a whirlwind over the last week in Giants country. We will be with you next Tuesday again, Tuesday and Thursday, every single week. So looking forward to a few days off, and we'll get back with you next week. For Patricia and Mark, my name is Jay. God bless. We'll see you next week.